2, 1. Hello, Scoopsters. I think we're live now. We're ready to go.
Yes, hello, fools and ghouls.
Tonight is the first ever episode. I think I'll proclaim it the first ever limited series podcast all about Scooby-Doo. I'm Ben Kessler.
And I'm Kaylee Newman.
And tonight we have two very special guests. We're here to talk all about Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Kaylee, who do we have tonight?
Tonight, joining us, we have Matthew Redacted Ovington, sorry, and Maggie Farese.
So let's get right into it. Let's go to the intro.
Hit it, sisters!
Zoinks! It's the witches! Easy, guys. It's just the Hex Girls.
I'm gonna cast a spell on you. You're gonna do what I want you to. Mix it up here in my little bowl. Say a few words and you lose control. I'm a Hex Girl.
So, on tonight, we have Matt Ovington and Maggie Farese. Kaylee, can you introduce our first guest?
Yes, I can. First up, we have Matt's financial consultant and close confidant, Maggie.
What's up?
Thank you so much for coming on, Maggie. And our second guest, he is a friend, comrade, lover. He is Hofstra television student and famous hater of Scrappy-Doo, Matthew Redacted Ovington. Thank you two so much for coming on. Before we get into the main attraction, which is Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, I first wanted to, have the audience hear a little bit about why you two wanted to be on the podcast. So starting with you, Maggie, could you talk a little bit about, did you watch Scooby-Doo when you were younger? Did you watch it when you were, maybe a little too old, as Kaylee is in a Scooby-Doo costume and I have a bunch of figurines here? This is an all things Scooby-Doo, so why were you interested in coming on the podcast?
I've watched this ever since I was a kid. I was a really big fan. Probably ever since, the age where you don't really have a reason why you like a certain show. You just kind of latch on to the ones that you latch on to. I mean, it's a great show, but, ever since I can remember, I was just, really into the original, the old TV show on Boomerang, and then, this is probably either The Witch's Ghost or Scooby-Doo meets Batman are my favorite of, the Scooby-Doo franchise. So, yeah, big fan.
And Matt?
I'd say a pretty similar reason. When I was a kid, obviously I watched all the Scooby-Doo stuff just because my parents put stuff on to distract me. And you just sort of latch onto it, as you said. And I had all the little figurines, a little mystery machine that would go around that fit all the guys inside. And it was really fun and cool. And then I got older, and the live-action movies were really great. I forget when they came out, but I was a kid of some fashion or another.
I think it was 2004.
Yeah, so I was a child, and I was like, these are fantastic, and I've loved it ever since.
Great. And, going into a bit about the movie we all watched, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, came out in 1999. I think this is my favorite personal era of Scooby movies, starting with Zombie Island a year or two before and going all the way up until what I would say around Aloha Scooby-Doo, which is in the mid-2000s. And this era, it's kind of remembering it as a kid and then rewatching it is a little weird because you remember it being, creepy or a different tone, and then you watch it now, and you're like, oh, I see how a kid could see that, but now I can still enjoy it for different reasons. Kaylee, what would you say is your favorite era of Scooby-Doo movies or media?
Yeah, I would definitely say this era that Witch's Ghost came from is my favorite because it contains my favorite Scooby film, which is Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, which we will talk about on a later episode. But all of these ones, I just remember watching them constantly. I feel like Cartoon Network would play them a lot, and so I would just see them. Like Witch's Ghost, I probably saw 100 times as a kid, so.
And to get right into the movie, I don't know if we're going to do a whole summary of it, but for you guys watching it, can you tell us a little bit about what you thought on basically a rewatch from a long time? I'm sure it had been a long time since a lot of us had seen it. What were you guys' first impressions watching it all the way through?
It's definitely, the first thing I noticed was that it's shorter than I remember it being. I don't know why I thought it was a long movie. It's only an hour long. It's not very long. But a lot of things are constantly happening, which is surprising to me. Now, as a kid, obviously, it was it was whatever. I was like, wow, this is content. I didn't realize how fast it was moving and how short it actually was.
Yeah, they fit a lot of acts into an hour, and it didn't really feel rushed, which I was like pretty impressed about. There was also like we talked briefly about this before, but there was so much that I forgot. Like I remembered the Hex Girls, and I remembered Ben. What's his last name?
Ravencroft.
Ravencroft. Yeah, I remembered him because he had the beard and the ponytail. But I remembered literally nothing else about this movie. Like it had to have been like 10 years since I watched it, so it was very enjoyable for me, I would say.
And Kaylee, what were you, as someone who's seen this movie probably a few times, what did this really strike with you the most when you watched it again and prepped for this?
I remembered it being like really action-packed, kind of like Matt said. Like they fit a lot into an hour. There were still a lot of parts I forgot about, like the whole thing with Scooby and Shaggy in the restaurant eating all the food. I completely forgot that was even a thing in this. And I like vaguely remembered that the Hex Girls were in this episode, but I didn't realize how big of a role they played, which I'm gonna hate myself forever for forgetting the Hex
It's their
Girls.
debut.
Of course. Yeah, it's the first one, right?
Yeah.
It is, which I can't believe I forgot that, but thank God I rewatched it and I got to see the Hex Girls debut again.
Yeah, and getting right into the way the movie starts for me, definitely basically the cold open of the movie, which starts in the museum, actually comes back later when Ben Ravencroft says that he set it all up, and that's how he got them to come to Massachusetts. And I remember a lot of the movies, and a lot of movies and TV shows today have cold opens that maybe have nothing to do with what's later in the film, or you think doesn't have to do. And seeing that come full circle to me, I was like, oh, as someone who's now taken writing classes and knows a lot of people who love writing, it was like, oh, that is more clever than I remembered it being, because it felt like a throwaway at the beginning.
Well, right, because it doesn't. There's an acceptable enough excuse for why he's there that you don't like question. Like it doesn't make you think like, oh, maybe we'll figure out more about this later. Like you're just like, oh, he's there because he was like working on his book or whatever they said, and he like stopped them, and then he asked for help, like to come back with him for. Why did they come back to Massachusetts again?
Just to hang out.
Just to hang out, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah, okay. I was like, what are we missing? No, yeah, okay. So they were just gonna like see his house and like where he was from and everything.
Yeah.
But I didn't like think much of it, and then at the end I was like, oh, how about that?
It's the only reason anybody goes to Massachusetts is just to hang out.
Exactly.
The opening for me was interesting because I think we talked about it earlier, but it's sort of The Witch's Ghost is a very atypical Scooby-Doo story, and they use the opening to show the more typical what we're used to, and even throw a couple of jokes about the more formulaic style of like the shows and stuff, which I thought was really clever, I guess you could say, on their part, of like in pulling us in with the typical story like at the end, and then putting us into the more like a different version of the same story, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I love the physical bits from the opening. Like it was very, like you said, reminiscent of the original TV series. But it was also just like funny how they had them like in the little like museum sets. Like I thought that was very clever.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of how this was an atypical Scooby episode, it very much was an atypical Scooby episode because the unmasking happens halfway through the episode, and then the rest is there's a legitimate witch's ghost, which is very interesting for a children's episode of TV. So scary. I was scared as a 22-year-old.
Yeah, it's a little spooky, that's for sure.
What became Scooby-Doo is known for, unmasking the villain, and it's a person, and it's, someone, rigged a projector and they did this. Even in the live action movies, it's a person. I think this is one of the only movies I can remember where it ends and
it's like a real ghost. Yeah.
It's a ghost. It's a witch, and she's also a ghost, and she gets trapped in a spell book.
You
as
could say
does
she's
them.
a witch and a ghost. A witch's ghost, perhaps.
I think it's not a real person, and they do the reveal with the real person earlier, where, the whole town, which we'll get into, which is honestly very weird, which the whole town is just in on this entire kind of tourism trap that is very above kids' heads, the entire ploy, but I think it's just easy to explain, they wanted this to be real. But in actuality, I think they wanted money from the tourism. But
Right.
something that you were saying before we started, Matt, was no mystery is really solved in this.
No, I mean the only mystery that is the original ghost, who I was not confused, but I was watching it and they're explaining like how the ghost was moving,
Yeah.
and I was like, huh? So there was a
Right.
cherry picker and an
Yeah.
extension, and the
Yeah.
cook was like, what was the cook doing? Holding him how?
Yeah.
I didn't really understand. The things were cut off, and I was like, I don't know. But it's also wasn't a mystery, but nobody asked them to solve it. It wasn't like they just did that because they felt like it.
Well, I don't think they always necessarily are asked to solve the mysteries. Like, sometimes they stumble upon them.
Yeah, I think it's pretty situational, but in this one specifically, it's weird because we're made to assume the whole town is in on this from the people that we meet, and we're just made to think like everyone who is a regular in this town is in on this ploy. And does that mean that the whole time they're not really trying to trick the Scooby Gang, which is interesting to me, because you would think if you're trying to keep the secret up, you would, kind of want them to leave. They're kind of known for solving these cases. Even at the beginning, I think I saw on IMDb the start, someone's reading the newspaper and it talks about them on Zombie Island from the movie before. So it's connecting, within the universe. I think everyone's aware that this gang of teenagers and 20-year-olds, they get stuff done. They figure out crap that's going on, and it's
The only thing I can say about that is that they come in as this guy's guest, who is clearly a very prominent person in the town, and he's like the famous person from the town. So like when the mayor brings Shaggy and Scooby to the restaurant and they like call him like VIP guests or whatever, that like showed me that like they really care about what this like Ben Ravencroft guy thinks. So the only thing I can think of is they couldn't like tell them to leave because that would be too suspicious. So they just had to be really nice to them so they wouldn't like suspect anything. But I agree, it's kind of a plot hole.
Yeah.
I think that there's no need to scare them away. Like, scare them away, like they're not gonna be scared. They literally do. That's all they do. So
Yeah.
just don't do anything, and they won't figure it out. And eventually, they'll just leave.
Exactly.
just getting into a bit of the voice actors. I was looking it up in prep for this. There's a lot of turnover in Scooby-Doo voice acting overall. Obviously, you have Frank Welker, who's basically been Fred the entire time Scooby-Doo has existed. But the one that was interesting here is Scott Enos plays Scooby in this movie, but the movie before, I think it was someone who is a voice actor on Futurama, and they actually switched because he was filming Futurama. That is from this era, the only change of voice actors in this movie. You have B.J. Ward playing Velma, you have the same three people playing the Hex Girls, you have Mary Kay Bergman playing Daphne, and I wanted to know what you guys think of the voice acting, because it was something that was so memorable to me, of these people are Scooby, especially now we see Matthew Lillard has kind of taken up Shaggy. Do you remember certain voices and certain things from this? Did something sound different or off that you're like, I don't remember Scooby sounding like that?
Shaggy felt this actually stood out to me. It's funny you bring that up. Shaggy felt very high-pitched to me. Like, very high-pitched. So maybe it is Matthew Lillard. I don't know. Like, that could just be my, like, subconscious or whatever. But, that definitely stood out.
I think I'm in a similar spot. I think it was just that it's been so long since I've watched the older, this era of Scooby, that more modern Scooby is very, like, Shaggy sounds particularly very different. So that's why I think it was a little off-putting here, but everybody else sounded pretty much the same.
Kalle, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I agree that because I've seen the live action movies so many times, because I have two younger brothers and they think those movies are still hilarious. So we
They're
watch
right.
them. Yeah, they are right. They're correct. They're absolutely correct. And it's really me who makes them watch it with me. But yes, I think I'm used to like the Matthew Lillard and the live action voices as being those characters. But then rewatching this, it wasn't like off-putting or anything to me. It was just like, oh yeah, I remember this being how I used to watch Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, and something that's interesting to me too was there are a lot of throwaway jokes and gags, like you were saying, Maggie, with the intro in a way. There's a lot of different, throughout the whole movie, little throwaways and gags. And one that I wrote down was many points throughout this movie. Scooby, they say, "Oh, that dog," and he goes, "What dog?" Like, not like as a joke, but I'm also like, does Scooby-Doo know he's a dog? And I know this is controversial, but is it just this era of movies that he is he aware he's a dog? Has he been told he's been a part of the gang so much that he's just like, no, I'm a dog, but I'm like an advanced dog. I'm like a people dog. Where do we stand on this? Do we think that Scooby is cognizant of the fact that he is in fact a canine?
I'm tempted to believe that he knows that he is originally a dog, but like feels that like he's either evolved to like such an extent, or like it's just an evolved like version of the species, like in between like monkeys and humans, but like dogs and humans. Like he's in between there, so he's like he doesn't believe he's like a person, but he doesn't think he's like a dog. That's right.
I think that Scooby can't possibly not think he's at least mostly a dog. But I think he just doesn't want people perceiving him as a dog, and sometimes we don't want to be perceived, and that's okay, Scooby, it really is. But I think to know for certain, I have to see Scooby behave around another dog. How does he treat that dog? That's what would cement it for me, because they're just like, there's a dog. He's like, no, there's not, and he's like, okay, I guess.
I guess
move about their lives.
It could be he doesn't know what a dog is in general. That could be up there too. But I think I tend to agree a bit with both of you that he has to in some way know he is a dog. But it's a bit odd to me that even if he knows other dogs, exist, he's still at a table with Shaggy eating like crazy, and he's not like, oh, why aren't people, kind of yelling at me? Even in the live action movies, he, has to dress up as a woman to get on the plane. There's so many gag potentials, and then here he's just like, what dog?
Yeah.
But Matt brings up a good point. Like, how does he interact even with like Scrappy? Like I'm trying to think.
They're
like,
family.
Well, they're family, right? But like, does Scrappy not think he's a dog?
I like to pretend that Scrappy-Doo doesn't think.
I
pretend he knows that he's not real.
I did know that, so I was.
But unfortunately,
my question to Ben Kalle.
Fair enough.
I feel like, okay, so I recently rewatched Cyber Chase also, and I feel like there's another like security dog or something at some point in that movie, and Scooby talks down to the dog as if he is not also the same exact creature.
This is why I think he thinks that he's like a eugenics version like dog. That's what I think.
The Aryan dog.
Yeah.
Has Scooby gotten to a point, maybe of fame, where he sees other dogs? Maybe. I think there's a movie called Scooby Goes Hollywood where it's all reminiscing about him in Hollywood, and he's dancing with famous actresses, and he's like, the top guy. So it could be to me, yeah, the top dog. It could be to me that Scooby thinks that people see him in a different light because he's like, everyone knows who I am. I'm Scooby-Doo. Which makes me see him in a different light. I'm not going to lie.
I agree.
Really, it changes my perception. When someone says, you're a dog, and he goes, what dog? That's kind of belittling the person, too, in some sense. Even when it's the witch. It's also...
Did Scooby-Doo invent gaslighting?
It's possible.
He was gaslighting people all movie. He was just like, I'm not a dog. I don't know. Your friends are telling you something else. Answer in the comments. Is Scooby-Doo gaslighting these people?
Someone also calls him a hound in this movie, and he goes, where? So it's not even just the word dog. Just any mention that he is a canine creature, he's not having any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's inevitable, too, just going on to later down the movie. We talked about at the beginning. The Hex Girls, this is their first movie. The Hex Girls, the start of this podcast was from a tweet you sent out, Maggie, which was something along the lines of...
It was a picture of the Hex Girls, and it said, I'm sorry I can't be like them.
And that brought so many memories back into my head. I was like, I know who those three people are. And their songs are great. Their songs are great, not from a cartoon perspective, just from being songs in general. And my first question about the Hex Girls, seeing them on screen, why are they recurring characters? What makes them so popular coming back many times now?
goes to Matt.
Listen, we all know that Matt's a big Hex Girls fan. I have made no secret of my passionate thoughts about the Hex Girls. In this film in particular, they're obviously very tied to the setting, so they fit this film. As to why they come back, listen, they carry a strong message. Okay, they're eco-goths. Don't we all wish we could be eco-goths? Do we wish we had the gusto to be an eco-goth? And we just can't. We can't pull it off. None of us can, unfortunately.
But we
So they
can.
bring that back from the message, and I'm not. Are you guys complaining that they come back? No.
No.
Certainly not. No.
They had a certain flair.
They are very memorable to me. Like from my childhood, like I was like, wow, I want to be exactly like them, because they are not only are they fantastic musicians, they're super hot. They're like they like do like magic like dust. Like they're really good with special effects. Put on a great show, and then they also, one of them is a Wiccan and ends up saving the entire day. So what more could you really ask?
Yeah, Thorne, who we find out her real name is Sally. I think that's kind of like an unveiling, because a bit of the mystique of them is, oh, are they the people from the Salem witch trials who have survived this long? And everyone's like, the witches, but we can't go near them, the Wiccan or whatever. But
Right.
I think it kind of brought some humanity also to the characters, where you're like, oh, no, she's also just a girl who happens to do this stuff too.
Yeah, it was interesting. You really saw a personality shift from when like it was revealed that she was like the guy's daughter, the guy that was selling his pictures, and you found out that her name was Sally. Like she seemed much more like shy after that, kind of like timid almost. Like especially when they were like, you need to say the spell. She definitely was more timid than her like Thorne persona was, which I thought was it was smart writing.
Yeah, I think that's part of what made me think they were so cool when I was a kid, because it was like they have these like confident, cool personas, but then they're also just normal people, which I think is a really good idea to put into kids' heads. That like, yeah, you can be this really cool, amazing person. You're just anybody can do this. They're just normal people.
Okay.
We have a strong message about the environment.
Yes, that too.
Yeah.
Eco-goth.
Kind of slide it in there.
Yeah.
It's not overt. I mean, you get the point, but it's not like the whole movie. They're like, save the Earth. Also, here's Scooby-Doo. And I like that. I like that it's not throwing down, the entire movie. You're like, okay, I see what they're doing. It's first and foremost a Scooby-Doo movie. And second, also, we should save the Earth.
Yeah, and they put it into a catchy song, which
Still gets stuck in my head to this day. I'll be walking around and it'll just be in my head. I'm like, wow. They really left that with me. The impact, the influence.
Place of naivety. Did they invent the eco-goth, or is there an eco-goth community that I'm unaware of?
That's a great question.
I am not prepared to answer this question.
And
Answer in the comments. I think eco-goth's real.
I'm sure there are some people who believe they're eco-goths. Do I know what they stand for? No. Do they exist because of this movie or before this movie? Probably. That would be my guess.
Probably like goth, like vegans or something.
I mean, I'm sure goth people exist. That we know. And I'm sure there are goth people who care about the environment.
This much we know.
Do they self-identify?
But do they self-identify?
Identification of my brand is both goth and being about the environment. It's quite interesting.
They have a very specific niche brand. An environmentally conscious goth.
So I have done some very surface level research here very quickly. Eco-goth was first termed publicly through the kids movie Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost.
Oh.
So they invented being eco-goths.
Wow.
They set the standard. That's the gold standard.
Really impressive, because it seems like that should have been a thing before that.
Yeah, they started a movement.
Yeah.
That's really incredible. I want to shift a bit to talking about the movie as a whole. We've talked about a few different parts, and I think it's a good time to do something that we're going to do on a bunch of these episodes, most of them, which is rating the movie. I think we're going to do 2 ratings. We have a 10 Scooby snack chart here. You can give it anything out of 10 Scooby snacks. You can add decimals. You can do what you want. I'd like to hear everyone's out of 10 Scooby snacks, a nostalgic rating from when you were a child, or this nostalgia part of you that remembers this movie, and then a current watched rating. What would you give it out of 10 Scooby Snacks? Kaylee, do you want to start?
Sure, I will start. Nostalgia rating. I remember loving this movie as a kid. Like I think, Ben, when you and I had talked about this podcast before, I always put it in like my top 3 because I remembered loving it as a kid. So I'm gonna give it 9 out of 10 Scooby Snacks. So there's only one that deserves 10 out of 10, which is Cyber Chase. But this one is a close 9 out of 10. And then rewatching it now, I'm sticking with 9 out of 10. It was still great. 9 out of 10 Scooby Snacks across the board.
Maggie?
Nostalgic wise, I'm gonna give it an 8.5 only because I think Legend of the Vampire and Scooby-Doo meets Batman would like shock me with nostalgia. This didn't shock me with nostalgia because I didn't remember a lot about it. So it would it didn't even jog a lot of my memory. So it felt like almost like a first watch, weirdly. But watching it again, like as a children's film, like I would give it like a 9.5. Like it had all of the elements that a good like there was like good physical comedy and like there was a twist that I wasn't expecting. So yeah, 9.5.
And Matt?
I think nostalgia-wise, I have to go with 9 Scooby Snacks, only because this was like one of the first Scooby-Doo movies I remember loving as a kid. And every time something would happen, I go, oh, right. It was like, would bring it back, like, oh, I remember this happened. And I think as an adult, I actually am going to drop down and give it like an 8 Scooby Snacks, maybe 7.9 Scooby Snacks. Listen, I have some character issues. I got some issues. All right, this is not a perfect movie, but it's fun. So I think 8 Scooby Snacks, maybe 8.5 for the Hex Girls, and that's it.
Yeah.
Ben, what is your rating?
I think my nostalgic rating, I think I'd give it an 8 out of 10 because I remembered enjoying it a lot, but I didn't remember the specifics of the movie. And then my rewatch, I think I'm the opposite of Matt. I have to bump it up 1 and give it a 9 out of 10 just based on the fact that I think when you watch these movies as a kid, like we said before, they feel so much longer. And watching it now and the runtime, I think that only helps. Anytime a kid's movie that you remember is shorter and packs a lot into that isn't so, just for the kids, basically.
Yeah.
It helps a lot on the rewatch remembering it because you're like, I remember that and this, and there's not a whole chunk that you entirely forget. And like you were talking about Maggie, too, with the twist, it holds up. It works as a twist. If you don't know what's happening, you will be a little flummoxed. You will be bamboozled that something is going on. There's 2-3 twists in the movie that you're like, wait a second. I love the moment where Ben Ravencroft, Velma, I think, says, that's not a journal. And he goes, it's a spell book. And you're like, oh, that, to me, that's, the big reveal is great. Yeah, I made that exact noise on both my watches.
The thing about the twist, really, for me, is that, like, they set up this great narrative already. So, like, you have no problem with the narrative that they have set up, which is that his ancestor was wrongly accused, just like many people were in the actual Salem witch trials. And he was trying to find the journal to, like, absolve her of that. So, like, that is a noble cause, and that's something that you're, like, rooting for the whole movie. So then when he finds the journal, you're like, oh my god, this guy got what he's been, like, searching for. Like, this is, like, what's, like, inspired his whole work. And then it turns out that he did find what he was searching for, but it was a completely different reason than you originally thought. So that, like, really messed with your mind.
They also, I think, laid some breadcrumbs throughout the movie that the twist was gonna happen. Because I did remember that twist, and I didn't remember the beginning, but, like, halfway through I was like, I'm understanding what's happening because of the little hints they would give, or every time they talked about it, he was like, oh, the book. And then I think Velma maybe, or Daphne was like, he's really after this book. I was like, oh, right, the book.
Is that one of your you said in your rating that you had some problems with the movie. Was this one? What would you say, Matt, as I guess of the four of us, the one who enjoyed it the least on the rewatch? What was your biggest flaw with the movie?
So I guess right in the beginning, Ben Ravencroft shows up. I accept, as a kid's movie, I accept that to be the reason he's there. And he's like, why don't you kids come hang out with me in Massachusetts for this holiday? And they're like, I would love to do that. Which is not a great thing to be like, hey, just because someone's famous, you should hang out with them. And Velma's like, oh my god, he's great. She gets in his car and drives to Massachusetts with him. It's like, I don't think you should be doing that because this is a grown man with a ponytail. Like, don't get in his car. And so right in the beginning, I was like, that's
Okay, the ponytail you have to contextualize in 1999. It is not as strange in 1999 as it would be to have a ponytail today and ask somebody to come hang out with you.
Could have been the main catalyst for them trusting him.
You think the ponytail was the main catalyst?
Yes.
That has to do with
Also,
some of it.
How old is Velma in this movie?
It's a great question.
Because he is throwing off vibes that I don't think are appropriate to be throwing off to someone of Velma's age.
I would agree.
Because I think Ben Ravencroft has got to be in his 30s.
I would agree. And you know what? I think she's throwing it back, and I think that's why everybody agrees to go, because they said, you know what, Velma, we'll let you have this one.
Yeah. Oh, Velma throws it back.
Yeah, and then everybody sees that, all of her friends, and they're like, you know what? We'll go with her on this. We'll wingman her on this. Whether or not that is appropriate is...
I'm saying there is no less than a 10-year age gap there.
I would agree. And so
And right in the beginning, I was like...
Yeah.
Yeah, Velma also classically the foil to Daphne in some sense. So, like we were saying, it could be a bit of Velma needs a win right now, whether it be, you know, she just needs a win, even if it's with this one weird guy with the ponytail. Let's just get Velma a win. We're not doing anything. We're just, you know, we're just going to random places across the country and overseas find mysteries. Why not go with the guy? I feel like there's no fear for them of anything. I know there's no. That's the one thing I think. You pack so much fear into Scooby and Shaggy as characters that the other three have zero fear of anything ever at all times. Someone could pull out a gun and be like, "I'm going to shoot you," and Fred would just stand there and be like, "Okay."
Fred would stand there and say something outrageous because Fred is funny as fuck for no reason at all. And I think that the only discovery him making is that the Hex Girls were playing at the concert, and they go, "How did you know that?" He goes, "What's on the sign?" It's the funniest shit I've ever heard in my life.
There is no way that he definitely knew. I think he
knew who they were. He
I
knew
think
they were.
he was a fan beforehand. That is my personal
He was a
belief.
fan.
He found them on the internet, and I think that he didn't want Daphne to know that he was a fan. So he looked around and he said, "That sign! Look, it's right there." And I read it.
I read it, yeah. It also, when they're going to follow Thorn, she's like, "Oh, you're going to follow Thorn." He doesn't respond. He just deadpan looks at him and says, "Shit is so funny." I'm like, what? He doesn't do anything else. First off, Velma needs to see a chiropractor because she carried them this movie. Hard carried them, Velma. She's the only one that really did any investigating.
She came up with all the plans, yes.
Mm-hmm.
What did Fred and Daphne do but flirt? Like
Yeah.
twice.
Fred tried to make a love confession to Daphne, and then
Did he try though?
Which
He attempted.
shocked me that there hadn't been any kind of communication on that front up until this point.
I think it's supposed to be in some ways teenage kind of, oh, will they, won't they? But at the same time, we're so into the lore at this point of Scooby-Doo. What I enjoyed about the movie was the movie assumes we already know everything about Scooby-Doo. It's not assuming we have no idea who Scooby-Doo is. Like with some of the later, more recent ones, it's trying to get a new generation into Scooby-Doo, and they, you know, the origin stories, the whatever, they're meeting, even with some of the live action ones on Cartoon Network. I like how this movie assumes, okay, if you don't know who Scooby-Doo is, you at least know they solve mysteries, and you're aware of what each person is, and it doesn't kind of baby you into saying, okay, here's what Daphne does, and here's what Fred does, and here's what Velma's doing, and I like that as part of it. It does not give Velma credit, though, Matt. I think you're right on that front.
Yeah, I also think that if Velma is old enough for Ponytail, Fred and Daphne are old enough to stop playing these games.
I agree.
They were tired of the will they, won't they.
Absolutely.
If Velma can get with Ponytail, you guys should just be together. And then I think my biggest plot hole is Ben's whole plan. Because I feel as though Scooby did not dig for that long, and Ben went out of his way and did a lot of pre-planning for a job a metal detector could have done. Really, if you put any sort of physical effort into it, you really could have done it.
Remember, he was looking at he thought it was the wrong tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, if he's smart enough to be like, "Oh, I'm a genius, I fooled you all," I feel like he should have been able to know
Yeah.
that the other big tree stump was a place it could, or just like go around everywhere. Little metal detector.
Yeah.
It wouldn't take that long, week
No,
maybe.
I agree. Mhm.
I think that he's a little lazy, to be honest, and he went out of his way to I'm gonna trick these kids into finding my spell book. Right? I really think if he gave it any effort at all, he could have found that spell book.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's kind of like the spell book's the MacGuffin in some sense, and you just kind of need it to get to that point. Once you hit that point, you kind of forget, oh, well, he just couldn't find it because it's under a different tree. Which, looking at it, it's a bit lazy in some sense, like, oh, obviously, under the other tree. But once you hit that point, it gets going so quick, the last few acts.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. I'm just, when I was watching it, he did the plan, I was like, okay, guy, sure. I feel like, give me a week in Oakhurst, Massachusetts, I'm fine with that spell book. No detective work necessary. Give me a metal detector and some headphones, and I'll find it.
Something I would be remiss to mention was we gave you 2 forums, and you guys talked a little bit about what you want to talk about the movie or other things. Matt, you asked, when did Velma become attractive? Yeah. So cartoon characters, first of all, can be attractive in some sense. They can be drawn attractively.
What I want to know, obviously, at the time of this movie, and when we were kids, Daphne was portrayed as the popular, quote-unquote, hot one of the group.
Yes, she was the hot one.
She was a hot one. I want to know how...
Oh, she is hot.
She's hot. Yeah. You're not wrong. I want to know why, in modern America, so many people are dressing up as sexy Velma and forcing me to see it. And I don't know why that's occurring, and I don't get it. I haven't seen a sexy Daphne ever. Never in my life. Have I seen anybody dress up as Daphne? Like, I'm Daphne. Because it's Velma. When did that happen? When did that shift come?
Do you think it's possible?
I don't know exactly when, but
I think I know when.
Well, let me put it out there. Do you think it's possible it initiated around this time? Because we've been saying, Velma clearly wants some romance with Ben Ravencroft. It's clear something is wanted that's more than just Velma being the logical of the group. And
I think that this movie is a step in the direction of it, in the sense that Velma is no longer just nerdy. She has these romantic feelings. And Kaylee's going to talk about the exact shift.
The exact moment that it shifted.
It's the leather. We know the moment.
I can tell you the exact moment. The live action movies, right? The second live action movie. Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
Monsters Unleashed. Arguably the better one.
Yes. Linda Cardellini plays Velma. Which, Linda Cardellini, hot.
Linda Cardellini, what are you doing on Thursday afternoon? That's what I want to know. I'm free Thursday.
If I may, there is an exact moment in that live action movie where Velma puts on a leather suit to impress somebody. An orange leather suit. Yeah. Velma is hot. That is the exact moment that everybody was like, okay, Velma's hot.
You think it never went back from there?
No. From that moment on.
That was her Hermione coming down the stairs in Harry Potter moment.
Yes.
And then it was and then on she was hot.
Velma being hot was fair game from that exact moment on.
I have to say, societally, I think part of it is that she's always spewing facts, random facts that just have to do with where they are or what they're doing. In this movie, she just started talking about the Salem witch trials, because they walked into this town that was in Massachusetts. Everybody was like, "Cool, awesome fact, Velma, thank you." And so I think that there is an element of her teaching you something that is inherently arousing.
Mm.
Really?
Yeah. I do.
Yeah, but I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah.
You think psychologically?
Yep.
You think psychologically based? There's something.
Like for somebody, she's psychologically, intellectually stimulated. As opposed to Daphne, who's kind of just standing there.
Shit, this girl's got brain cells.
Yeah.
And it's a big point too in the live action movies, and I think it's partly because of these movies from this era that we love that kind of bring up the point that Velma is this, Daphne is this, and it's so baked into every single Scooby-related movie, TV show, anything, that they are this one characteristic, that the movies afterwards in the mid-2000s are written in such a way as to really go against that and really say, no, Velma can be more than just smart, and Daphne can be more than just the damsel in distress. And that is definitely a large shift that we don't see in this movie, but I think this movie is more of just for the entertainment of the twists than adding to the, change in the characters that we see.
Yeah, I would agree. I also think that Velma was originally drawn like a little more curvaceous than Daphne, just to kind of like juxtapose each other like physically even more. But like now, like thickness is more appreciated in attractiveness, so that also probably has something to do with it. So I was watching this movie and I was like, Velma is thick.
I think we should also point out that Sarah, the witch, she's not bad. I'll say it. I'm not afraid.
So you
to
think
admit that.
Sarah the Witch
I'm not above
is
that.
is fairly attractive?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just kind of hot.
She's kind of hot.
Not hot.
Do you-
I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm not above that.
I'm not afraid to agree.
That could be why when she's, trying to murder people, they kind of, Scooby and Shaggy run away, but people for a while are just kind of looking at her.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, oh my god, that's the witch's ghost. She's there. And I think it could, some of it be like, wait, she looks like a person from nowadays. Because I think if someone from whatever time she's from came to today, we would look at them and be like, yeah, you don't look anything like people do nowadays. Like, you're clearly human, but not from here. But they look at her with this sense of like, whoa, you look like you're from here. And it could be because the town is so based in that time.
Right.
But there's definitely, I think, some of that plays into it. It might be my overthinking when it comes to that and trying to help this movie out from a writing perspective.
No, I can see that.
They don't really have to give it too much help writing wise, just because it's very clearly, it's obviously for kids, so they can take liberties that things that are meant for adults can't take. Like, they can just say stuff and kids will accept it, and we just have to accept that that's how it goes. So you don't really have to give it much help. You know what I mean?
Oh, something interesting about that I wanted to bring up was just like being from Massachusetts, I've been to Salem a few times before, and they must have obviously drawn upon that because they really nailed like the commercialization of a town that has like a rich history and something like witches that people find very alluring. Like the tourism thing is a real problem in Salem. During like fall especially, there's all this Harry Potter stuff, there's all this stuff, like anything witch has just come and just completely taken over the town of Salem. It's just like a town, but it's kind of just mobbed by like movie, and you almost like felt the desperation of the people who work there to kind of like, even though they didn't want their town destroyed, they needed the money, so like they kind of were willing to sacrifice that, and so that's kind of why they did the whole like ghost thing. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the Zoom glitched out there for a quick second on my end, but we're good now. And yeah, I got what you're saying, and that's one of the reasons I refuse to go to Salem or Massachusetts. I refuse. It's just
Salem or Massachusetts in general.
yes, all the touristy. I'm from New Jersey. A place people.
We're planning a trip to Salem, Oregon.
A place where
The child's there.
New Jersey, a place people love coming to for tourism, obviously. But going to your point of the tourist trap, in a way, the whole town's in on this tourist trap that we, for a kids movie, have to accept is like them doing a goof. There's no real reason. We know the reason. As adults, we can say they want money from tourism. They want people actually afraid around this time of year, so they get people to come to the festival, the parade. They get people to, Scooby and Shaggy eat an enormous amount of food. They want to sell this novelty stuff. But from a kid's perspective, I don't know if that's translated as much as this is capitalist greed from this town that's all pooling together just to make each other some money.
But I don't think it's I don't think it would be too confusing to a child. Like I think you could just accept it, and I like it because it almost makes it so that like adults and children can both watch the movie and kind of get something from it.
Yeah, there's the teamwork aspect of it too that I kind of admired. I was like, oh, they can all get together and like make this look like a real witch that's coming in and do all this shenanigans. Matt, you were saying before, it doesn't, when they reveal what the townsfolk were doing, it doesn't really make sense.
No, not at all.
No, there's a cherry picker involved, and there's the cook is somehow hoisting this man on the witch, but they don't really say. There's like it's an extension. It's like, is he holding him? Is he on some sort of platform? Why is it cutting the trees?
Yeah.
It doesn't really make. But like I get it, sure, but I don't know the logistics of it. I was like, what?
What
They
I
did-
thought
they
was
tried
like
what?
a pulley system. So like he was like pulling him this way, and then like it was up to like a pulley, and then he was like hanging from it like mountain climbing or something.
Yeah.
That's how I feel when you see like Tinkerbell at Disney like fly off the castle and it's like a zip line. That's how I think, it's kind of like the magic behind it, but then you watch like Tinkerbell land on a building and you're like, oh, it's a zip line. But in this movie, there's no like, okay, so here's the blueprint and she's going to go
Right.
here and then this person's in part of the witch costume and this person's hoisting the other end. So there's a shadow and it's kind of just like, oh, we all did that. And it's like, but did you? How?
I think it's also arguable in this movie that the gang did not help at all. They walked in and destroyed the tourist economy for this town, and then they freed the witch, and then Thorne is the one that sent the witch back. They really didn't.
And
They gave them
killed
big
Ben.
turkey. They did kill Ben. They murdered
killed
him.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was nothing inherently wrong with the way things were going in the town at the beginning. Like they were putting up a hoax, and people were willingly coming to see more of it. It's not like they were being terrorized by this ghost. Like tourism was booming because people wanted to come and like see more of it. So they kind of just messed stuff up.
That brings up the question: Is it an inherently negative thing that the townspeople are putting on this charade? Do we think it's negative? Do we think it's okay from either a moral standpoint or a logistical standpoint? That who knows how much money that costs the
It's
town?
interesting to note that Sarah Ravencroft was a witch, so they weren't wrong to be like, oh, let's banish her to the book. So that's part of their history. Like, oh, what can we use to bring more money in? We don't have any money. So why don't we use this part of our history? We had witches. It works in Salem. We might as well try it here. And it worked, and they weren't like defaming anybody who wasn't actually a witch.
Well, that's the thing, because like originally the only thing you could really pin them for is that they were exploiting this woman who wasn't really a witch, but she was. So, like, that's the only caveat, I guess.
But the tourism will be fine because remember they have that giant turkey.
Oh, yeah, they have
for
that.
sure.
And
That'll
also,
continue to bring
at the end, when Sarah and Ben are killed in the book, everything goes back to normal but the turkey. Turkey stays big turkey.
yes.
Tree goes back, pumpkins go back. Why is big turkey still big turkey? Was it just for us? Was it so
I think
we
it's
know
for the
that they'll
I
be
think it's for
okay?
the gag. I think it's for the laugh.
I think it was meant to be.
It was meant to be
So
the big
even
turkey.
they couldn't reverse it.
Yeah.
But I mean, did you not like that there was still big turkey?
Oh, I love big turkey.
Yeah.
I think big turkey belongs there.
I think
I worry for his future. I don't want him to be put in a cage like a zoo animal. I want him to be able to roam free. I worry how they're going to feed Big Turkey. I don't know how many people are going to go see Big Turkey, but I enjoy his presence, and I hope he has a wonderful life.
Can we talk briefly about how gruesome it was when Shaggy and Scooby showed up with the bowl of stuffing?
Stuffing.
The picture. I was like, oh my god.
Like, we're going
The
to baste
camera.
you.
The camera angle is like from the belly of the turkey with his legs open and he's standing there with a bowl of stuffing.
Yeah.
It's just
So we're going to
That's
stuff you, and
what-
we're going to baste you. And he said,
I think
Big
that's.
Turkey deserved better.
How would you scare a turkey in that sense, though? I mean, here in New Jersey, we have turkey vultures. They have no fear. They run at anything and everything. They look terrifying. Turkeys are a scary animal to approach,
Yeah.
let alone a
I've been chased
gigantic
by a
turkey.
They are scary.
You
I'm
know,
not saying you're wrong, but
It was
Threatening
a
to s-
little rough. It was a little
it was shocking.
it's out there.
It felt like a violation a little bit.
it
Yeah.
did.
My mouth was agape when it happened. I'm not going to lie to you. I
I
but
would have rather them like hold a gun to his face than
some of the threat.
It felt very personal, like a very personal attack on the big turkey.
They could have pulled out a fork and knife. They could have done a lot of things.
Yeah. They didn't have to have a bowl just in front of.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Also, another note to point out is that Scoob and Shag, they're masters of disguise. They've got disguises ready at all times. They have the hedge disguise. They have the people making out disguise. They have the communal disguise.
Can we talk about the couple making out disguise?
Couple making out.
A great disguise.
Wig. I loved his wig.
He was killing that wig.
Yeah.
2 questions I really want to ask every episode we do, Kalle, was at the start, and something that's throughout this whole movie is Scooby snacks play, a large enough presence in the movie that you're aware of them. Not huge, but something that I was thinking about was, is Scooby named after the snack, or was the snack named after Scooby? I did no research on this because I don't want to know the answer. I want to know what people think is more reasonable.
Yeah, I actually had the same thought. I was wondering that at the end when Velma wants Scooby to dig, and she's like, for 2 Scooby snacks? I was like, do they make the Scooby snacks for just him? Like, what, where, why?
I don't think that Velma would be above decorating that box full of snacks for Scooby. I think that the snacks are named after Scooby. And just because it looks like it's a mass-produced thing, I think she just, she's in the mystery machine in the back. She gets bored, Fred and Daphne are flirting, Scooby and Shaggy are eating. She's like sitting there drawing on boxes. Like, what else can she do? So I think that they're for Scooby.
And it's interesting because I do think that no matter which started which, now that Scooby is a public figure inherently within this universe, the Scooby snacks have to have been commercialized, and they are now sold in stores across the country. That is what I think.
My personal theory changes a lot. I guess I'd say that the snack is named after Scooby, as some people in the comments are even saying. Yeah, it's obvious. But I think that it's named after him, and that's why they have so many. And that they just are given basically a lifetime supply of these for Scooby, which makes sense considering how much he eats. And I think maybe there's a story there, that Kalle and I will create when we direct our own Scooby-Doo movie about him getting how this came to be.
Food, or are they something else?
Yeah, this all goes back to
Scooby doesn't eat dog food
because he's being fed treats in order to do things. Like Velma, very directly is inciting him to do tasks for her by giving him snacks, which is inherently a canine thing to do. So does he not realize that this system is happening? Is it like a operant conditioning situation where he doesn't realize that he just hears the food and then is immediately doing this? Or does
it also incentivizes Shaggy as well, because
Yes.
Shaggy also will do stuff for Scooby snacks with
Yes.
Scooby.
So the 2 theories are, is Scooby more like a human, or is Shaggy more like a dog? And I think that leads you to the answer of, are the snacks made for dogs or for people? Because Scooby eats.
Scooby is more like a human, and I think that they're made for both. I think they are dog treats that consist
What a
of
cop
human
out!
food.
What a cop out!
They're dog treats, obviously. They're meant to be
Have you
given
ever
to
had
dogs.
the ones that they sell at the store?
They come in the blue and green box and the bone shape.
Yep.
Yeah, they're delicious.
They're actually really good.
Yeah,
So, but that
Would you
is-
feed
that's
those to your
a
dog?
dog treat. I would. Is that healthy? I haven't.
I would
Somebody
just
in the comments, let me know if I can feed Scooby snacks to my dog.
I feel like that would be a bad PR move if they were like poisonous for dogs.
Yeah.
How many
Yeah.
kids would not have been eating Scooby snacks and given one to their dog?
Exactly.
Dogs have eaten Scooby snacks.
Actually, I also remembered something else when we were talking about if Scooby knows that he's a dog or not. When Scooby and Shaggy first see the Hex Girls coming down that alleyway or whatever, they look at each other and they're like, "Girls!" And then they both puff up their chests to try to impress the Hex Girls.
Yes.
So
Scooby's mimicking there. It's got to be.
He's
I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
That's mimic
Are you trying to
behavior.
get with the Hex Girls?
No, I don't think Shaggy is either. I think Shaggy just knows he's these are girls. There's my. And Shaggy puffs his chest up, and Scooby's like, "Oh, okay." And Scooby puffs his
They
chest up.
do it simultaneously.
Yeah.
They've been together all the time. It's not like Shaggy did it. He's like, "Oh, this is what we do." Scooby knows that's how you react to girls. Shaggy probably done that before. Because Fred's probably done that before. Because Fred's a player.
On the topic of the Hex Girls, going to some of our audience questions, Greg Airmore asks, which Hex girl is the hottest? So,
Thorn.
Thorn.
Easy question.
Easy.
Next question.
Done. Next question.
Maggie?
She's the ethereal bisexual that Velma was talking about.
Absolutely, I agree that Thorn is the hottest one, but I think I want to be friends with Luna more than Thorn.
So you have Dusk, Thorn, and Luna. Why would you want to be
That's
friends
the
with...
one. Luna's the purple dress with the red hair,
Yes.
and then Thorn's the main one. She just seems really cool. Like, all love to Thorn. Like, she seems awesome too, but there's something very mysterious about Luna that I want to learn more about. I like
Luna-
that she's a keyboard player.
Luna reminds me too much of the girl from Prince of Being a Wallflower.
Oh.
His first girlfriend in Prince of Being a Wallflower. They look very similar. Obviously, this movie came out first, so at the time I was like, "Oh, she's great." And then now on rewatch, that's what I was thinking of the whole first time.
Wait, what?
Are
Are we
you-
talking about the same one?
are you talking
Yeah, we're
about
talking about the drummer, right? The blonde one.
No. Luna's the other one with the red hair.
Yeah, Luna has the really big hair.
I have them flopped. Luna
Okay.
does seem cool. You're right. I agree with you.
I was like, I don't think those people look alike at all. Okay.
No.
It's okay. Another question I had kind of to wrap up the whole thing. Going on an hour here, and then we can get into to round it out some things that you guys wanted to talk about that maybe you didn't get a chance to bring up. My last question for you guys is, and how we're going to end every podcast is this a good date movie? What is this a solid movie to watch on a date? Huge thanks to Julia Rowe for this topic, this question. I think it brings up a lot of points about, again, the length of the movie, the tension in the movie between the twists and, you know, the odd sexual tension between Ben Ravencroft and Velma, and the weird tension between Daphne and Fred that it's kind of abrupt a bit and then kind of just drops. So would you consider this a good, great, amazing, awful date movie? Why or why not? Whoever wants to start.
I can go first. Okay, Kalle,
Okay,
go first.
you are my guest, Matt. You go right ahead.
I think it's a good date movie because there is all that tension, right? And that's something to bond over. Watching Scooby-Doo is great because you can talk while things are going on and still kind of have pay attention. It doesn't require all your attention. You know, it's a movie that can play and you can still get everything that's happening without like being forced to pay attention to it. And it is only an hour long, so sometimes you don't want to sit through a 2-hour movie. You know, it's 1 hour is enough time. You can go do something after. It doesn't take up a big chunk of your day. I think it's a good date movie. Is it great? I don't know if it's great, but it's good.
Yeah, I would agree. It's very solid. It is a solid choice. I don't think it would get you any bonus points with your partner. But yeah, there's enough, the stakes are high enough. There's a little bit of romantic undertones. It is only an hour long, so like, if the sexual tension is rising within the room that you're in, then you don't need to be like, stop the movie in the middle, because it's not that long. You can write out an hour and you can go do what you're gonna do. So I would agree. It's good, not great.
Kaylee?
Well, I'm telling you right now, my answer will be the same for every single movie that we discuss. It is a great date movie. I think for all the reasons that Matt and Maggie just said, that's what makes it great. It's a perfect date movie. It's only an hour long. There's tension. There's sexual tension. It's quick. It's funny. It's great. Great date movie.
Yeah, and I think I'd actually put it a bit lower than what Matt and Maggie were saying, just based on the fact that I think you need to put a little more thinking into watching this movie. Yes, it's a kid's movie. There are a lot of twists. I don't think it's a movie that I think you kind of have to watch it straight through, that if you pause it and come back, you're going to be like, what's that guy's name? What's he do? Who is he? There's a lot of characters in this movie for only being an hour. And as what happens with everyone in that, basically I know, everyone forgets the names of people in movies and TV shows and forgets just general plot points no matter how much you watch. And I think if you're with your partner or whoever you're watching this movie with, if you stop it and come back, if you miss a part or miss something, you might be a little bit like, oh, that's a little odd, and then pop back in. But I think if you watch it all the way through with your partner, very solid, very, solid time. You can, any Scooby movie you can talk during, you can pop back in, you can make little quips. I don't think it's a world ender there, but I think overall, solid in that realm. Is there anything that you two, before we round it out here, wanted to discuss about the movie from watching it, about Scooby-Doo, about your favorite Scooby-Doo media in general?
Honestly, I think we hit some great points today. I don't think I have anything else to discuss. Nothing.
I agree.
Great.
I got through my notes.
Kaylee and I have no outro planned, but we want to thank both of you so much for coming on. With some minor technical difficulties, I think this was some great discussion about Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost from 1999, which I wasn't born, but I grew up watching. I was born in 2000.
I was born in 2007.
2012. And I can't wait to get into more of this era and to hear your guys' thoughts, even though, you won't be on for some of the other movies, to hear your guys' thoughts on general Scooby-Doo. You guys have the Boomerang account info. You can watch whatever you want to. And can't thank you enough for being on.
Thank you for having us.
And that's it. That's it, Scoopsters.
That's it, ghouls and ghouls. We did it.
I'm going to fade out to the intro outro. Thank you guys so much.
Hit it, sisters!
Zoinks! It's the witches! Easy, guys. It's just the Hex Girls.
I'm gonna catch